Lantern light swung slow and mean across the barn rafters, each creak of rope echoing like a warning. Dust hung in the air, dry, bitter, the taste of old hay and fear. Clara May stood rigid in the glow, her chin high, though her hands trembled at her sides. Ezekiel Crow stepped from the shadows, boots grinding the dirt. Whiskey sweat rolled off him, sharp as gun oil. In his fist, a burlap sack sagged heavy with silver poker chips, the clink of ill-gotten winnings. "Sign the paper," he growled, voice rough as gravel. "Sell the land. Take the money. Walk away." Clara didn't move. "You hear me, girl?" His words cracked the air. "Your mama's gone. This place is mine now." Her heart hammered, but she met his eyes. "I'll never bow to them." Her voice cut like a blade, echoing through the empty barn. The sack hit the dirt with a dull thud. Chips spilled like cold stars. Ezekiel's face twisted. In a breath he crossed the space, backhand flashing. The slap rang out, sharp and final. Clara's head snapped sideways. Warm blood bloomed at the corner of her mouth. He gripped her arm, fingers like iron. "You'll learn respect." Lantern light trembled. Dust swirled with every cruel drag of his boots as he pulled her toward the corral. Clara dug her heels, the earth itself seeming to resist. "Let go," she hissed, but his grip only tightened. The wind shifted, carrying the low growl of an oncoming storm. Somewhere outside, a horse stamped and snorted, sensing violence. Ezekiel leaned close, breath hot with whiskey. "No law out here but mine." Clara forced herself to stand straighter, even as pain burned her shoulder. "Then the law will find you," she said, voice steady. For a moment, silence. Only the creak of the barn door and the distant rumble of thunder. His eyes narrowed, a glint of something darker than rage. "You'll regret that," he spat, shoving her hard into the dust. The lantern end swung wider, shadows stretching like black claws across the walls. Outside, the storm gathered. Inside, the air felt heavy enough to break. Clara lifted her chin through the sting of dirt and blood, the words still ringing in her chest like a promise. "I will not break." The desert night stretched endless and cruel, a sheet of black velvet pierced by cold stars. Clara May's breath came ragged against the gag of dust in her throat. Her wrists burned where the coarse rope bit deep, lashed tight to a splintered fence post driven into the barren earth. Ezekiel's riders had left in a thunder of hooves hours ago, their laughter fading into the empty dark. Now only the hiss of wind and the far-off yip of coyotes remained. The moon slid from a ragged cloud, silvering the endless flats. Every shadow became a predator. Her lips cracked as she tried to swallow. The air tasted of iron and sand. She shifted, rope grinding skin raw. Pain flared, sharp and alive. A dry rattle came from the sagebrush, low, warning. Clara froze. A rattlesnake uncoiled inches from her boot, scales whispering like a devil's promise. She held her breath until the creature slipped back into darkness. Memories flickered against the cold. Her mother's soft humming, the smell of fresh bread, the warmth of a fire that would never burn again. They were fading fast, like smoke in the wind. She forced a whisper past parched lips. "Not like this. Not tonight." A gust swept the flats, lifting grit into her eyes. Tears burned, then cooled on her cheeks. Hours bled into each other. The stars wheeled. Her knees gave way, but the rope held her upright, a cruel puppeteer. Distant thunder rumbled from the west. Lightning flashed far on the horizon, a brief white blade across the dark. For a heartbeat she imagined it striking close, cutting the ropes, setting her free. Her head drooped, vision tunneling. Still a stubborn sea. Park refused to die. She lifted her chin toward the endless sky. "This land is still mine," she rasped, "and I will not break." The wind carried her words out over the flats, a faint defiance swallowed by the night. Somewhere beyond the darkness a horse whinnied, a low, questioning sound. Clara's eyes fluttered open. She thought she saw the faint swing of a lantern far off, bobbing like a lonely star. then silence again. She breathed deep, the pain anchoring her to life. Dawn, she told herself. Just hold until dawn. The first hint of dawn bled pale blue across the Cholla Flats, a cold promise after a night of merciless dark. Clara May hung against the post, head bowed, breath thin as smoke. Hoofbeats came soft at first, then steadier, a measured rhythm against the sand. A lone horseman emerged from the fading night, lantern swinging from his saddle horn. The glow cut through the emptiness like a single star refusing to die. Jonas McCrae reined in, his broad frame casting a long shadow across the cracked earth. Silver streaked his beard, and the weight of years sat quiet in his eyes. He scanned the ground, saw the rope, the girl, the blood at her wrists. "Easy now," he said, voice low and steady as a creek at dawn. Clara flinched, too weak to speak. Jonas dismounted in one slow motion, boots sinking into sand. He knelt, knife glinting in the lantern light. The rope gave way with a dry snap. Clara sagged forward, and he caught her before she touched the dirt. "You're safe," he murmured. "Got you?" Her eyes fluttered open, wide with disbelief. Who are you?" "Name's Jonas. Rancher down near Silver Vein." He wrapped his heavy duster around her shoulders. "Let's get you warm." He lifted her as if she weighed no more than a child, settling her against his chest. She felt the slow, steady beat of his heart, a sound stronger than the wind. The ride back was a blur of moonlight and faint color creeping into the sky. Jonas held the reins with one hand, the other steadying her as his horse moved. Sheriff hooted across the flats. They reached his cabin just as the sun cracked the horizon. Smoke from the chimney curled into the morning air, carrying the scent of pine and coffee. Inside, the world softened. Firelight flickered along rough-hewn walls. A kettle hissed on the stove. Jonas eased her onto a worn chair, then draped a blanket over her shoulders. "Drink slow," he said, pressing a tin cup of water to her lips. Clara sipped, the first drop of cool relief sliding down her throat like salvation. Jonas met her gaze, quiet but certain. "You're not alone anymore." For the first time since the nightmare began, Clara believed him. Outside, the dawn stretched wide, a new day waiting to be claimed. Night settled over the valley like a thick wool blanket, the sky stitched with cold stars. Jonas McCrae stood on his porch, a rifle resting easy in his hands, eyes sweeping the dark. The lantern at his door swung in the restless wind, throwing long shadows across the yard. Inside, Clara sat near the stove, the flicker of firelight tracing the bruises on her face. She listened to the distant rumble of hooves, a sound that crawled through the floorboards and set her teeth on edge. Jonas heard it too. He stepped down into the yard, boots crunching on frost-hardened dirt. "Stay inside," he called without looking back. The hoofbeats slowed, then stopped. 3 riders emerged from the tree line, Ezekiel Crow at the front, his black coat snapping like a crow's wing. 2 henchmen flanked him, their horses restless, breath steaming in the cold. Ezekiel grinned, yellow teeth flashing in the lantern glow. "Evening, old man. Heard you been keeping what's mine." Jonas raised the rifle just enough for the moon to catch its barrel. "Ain't yours. Not tonight." Ezekiel's gaze flicked to the cabin window where a faint light trembled. "Girl belongs to me, always has." "She belongs to no man," Jonas said, voice low as thunder. One of the henchmen shifted in his saddle, hand brushing his holster. Jonas didn't flinch. "Best you ride on," he warned, "before the law rides in behind you." Ezekiel chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "Law? Out here, the law's whoever's willing to shoot first." Jonas stepped closer, lantern glow painting the edge of his jaw. "Then you'd best be certain you're faster." The night held its breath. Only the whisper of wind through sagebrush moved between them. Ezekiel's grin faltered, the faintest twitch of doubt crossing his eyes. He jerked his reins. "This ain't over." "Wasn't expecting it to be," Jonas replied. The outlaw spat into the dust, then turned his horse with a harsh yank. The riders melted back into the dark, hoofbeats fading into silence. Jonas waited until the sound was gone before lowering the rifle. He glanced toward the cabin where Clara watched from the doorway, lantern light catching her steady gaze. "They'll be back," she said. Jonas nodded, voice like granite. "Then we'll be ready." The wind shifted again, carrying the smell of distant rain, an omen and a promise. The first rays of morning stretched over the valley, washing the cabin in thin gold. Jonas saddled his bay gelding without a word, the leather creaking under his steady hands. Clara stepped out, blanket draped across her shoulders, eyes still bruised but fierce. "You don't have to ride with me," Jonas said, tightening the cinch. Her chin lifted. "He won't scare me into hiding." Jonas studied her a moment, then nodded. "Stay close." They rode through the hush of dawn, frost glinting on sage and fence wire. The trail wound toward Silver Vein, a mining town waking to the smell of coal smoke and frying bread. As they entered, shutters cracked open, wary faces peering out. News of Ezekiel's threats had already traveled faster than horseflesh. The sheriff's office sat squat and square near the dusty main street. Sheriff Calder stepped onto the boardwalk as they dismounted. Broad-shouldered and gray-bearded, he carried the weight of frontier law in his Yes. Jonas tipped his hat. "Morning, Sheriff." Calder's gaze flicked to Clara, taking in the bruises, the raw rope burns. "Miss, you all right to speak?" Clara straightened, voice steady. "My stepfather tried to force me off my land, left me to die in the flats." Calder's jaw tightened. "Name?" "Ezekiel Crow." The sheriff spat into the dust, slow and deliberate. "Crow's been a thorn a long while." He stepped inside, motioning them to follow. Papers rustled, the scent of tobacco thick in the room. "We'll file a writ of protection," Calder said, pulling a form from a drawer. "Judge'll sign once the telegraph goes through." He looked to Jonas. "You can keep her safe?" Jonas nodded. "Ain't no one crossing my fence uninvited." Clara signed her name with a hand that barely trembled. The sheriff pressed his seal into the paper, the wax cooling like a promise. Outside, townsfolk gathered in quiet clusters, murmuring of Crow's gang. Some eyes held fear, others admiration for the young woman standing tall despite the storm around her. As they mounted to ride home, Calder called after them, "We'll be ready when he shows." Jonas tipped his hat once more. "So will we." They rode out as the sun climbed higher, the town shrinking behind them, hope riding alongside the low thrum of distant thunder. The sun bled out behind the ridgeline, leaving the valley bathed in a deep copper dusk. Jonas McCrae checked the rifle leaning by the door, the metal cool beneath his fingers. The air held the stillness of a held breath. Inside the cabin, Clara fed another log to the fire. Sparks leapt upward, brief stars against the dark. Her eyes flicked to the window where the night pressed close. "They're coming," she whispered. Jonas heard it too, the distant thunder of hooves, slow at first, then growing, a drumbeat of menace rolling across the open land. He doused the lantern, letting the room fade, fell into shadow. Outside, a jagged line of torches appeared along the ridge. Flames licked the wind, casting wild shapes across the sage. Ezekiel Crow rode at the front, coat snapping like a black sail. 6 men followed, their laughter sharp as broken glass. Jonas stepped onto the porch, rifle steady. "Stay inside," he told Clara. Ezekiel's voice carried through the night. "Jonas McCrae, you got something of mine." "She's no one's but her own," Jonas called back, words flat as the desert plain. Crow laughed, the sound dry and cold. "Then burn with her." He raised a torch high. In a rush, riders split left and right. Fire flared as torches struck fence rails. Dry wood caught fast, flames clawing upward. The crack of splitting timber echoed like rifle shots. Jonas fired once, a warning shot that sang across the dark. One outlaw reeled, his horse screaming as it reared. Inside the cabin, Clara gripped the shotgun Jonas had left for her. Her heart hammered, but her hands held firm. When a shadow lunged at the window, she fired. The blast lit the room in a sudden white flare. The attacker fell back with a howl, torch tumbling into the dirt. Smoke thickened. The barn roof hissed as flames climbed higher. Jonas moved like a storm, calm, precise. Another shot from his rifle sent sparks from the rocks near Crow's feet. Ezekiel reined hard, snarling, "This ain't over, old man." Jonas's voice cut through the crackling fire. "Then you'd best bring more than fire next time." For a heartbeat, the world held only the roar of burning wood and the pounding of hooves retreating into the black. Clara stepped onto the porch, smoke curling around her like a dark veil. Her shotgun hung steady in her grip. "They'll come again," she said. Jonas nodded, eyes on the dying flames. "And we'll be waiting."